Damn, guys, that's slick. Hey folks, welcome back to Bolts and Brass. So what we're doing today is I'm going to go through the top EDC folding knives of the year according to Outdoor Hub. And I'm going to go through and tell you what I think of each one of their choices. And this is not like they didn't do any research on this in terms of like sales numbers. This is the particular author's opinion on the top choices. And he's got budget choices and he's got high-end choices in here. So we're going to switch over here and you are going to be seeing my main screen. And let's make this, there we go. Unfortunately, that didn't really help. It just slid it over. Oh well. So the first choice he's got, first, he gives some rundown on what he thinks matters for EDC, right? But the first one he's got, Monterey Bay Knives Slayback Flipper. I've never seen this one before in my life, which is true of a lot of these. I have not kept up with the state of the art on EDC folders. I just don't care. So we got a straight edge, essentially, Warnick style, where the bolt comes down from the top as opposed to coming up from the bottom. Makes for a very fine point, but also a very fragile point. You're trading off strength for precision on that tip. It's a flipper. Seems to be a liner lock. They don't give us... Yeah, compact liner lock, titanium. Not a lot of grip on that handle, but you've got the flipper, so you're not going to slide forward on it. 3/4 height bevel. I'm guessing it's relatively thin. ZDP 189, decent steel. 3-inch blade, slim. I like it. I think that makes a perfect gentleman's folder. It isn't going to scare the crap out of people. It doesn't look super aggressive, but it's going to work. I like a little more curve. I like a little belly in my blades, but depending on how you use your EDC, that could be great. Keep in mind that tip, if you're using it to open packages all the time or you're using the point all the time, you're going to eat that tip because when you try to resharpen that tip, you're going to start rounding it over if you're not very, very careful. Next one, Kaiser Stephenkempa VK1FL. Okay, so he's somebody who has been doing this a while, but it's the first production knife they've done. Back to titanium, concealed flipper, so it's down in this handle area, which is always interesting. Looks like they've got a good bearing system in there, so it's probably going to be very tight side to side. Again, a relatively straight edge, but they took into consideration how we normally use our knives, and the edge is beveled up. It's from your hole, the angle is up, so when you're cutting downward like that, you're not just using the point. It's a little easier to use more of the edge. A little reverse false edge up here, is what it is. It helps reduce the total thickness, except that they left the total thickness here in the middle part when they did their grind. But given the design, aesthetically very pleasing. I like the handle. Again, you're going to have to be very careful of that point, but very nice. This strikes me more as a folder for somebody who has a rotation. They carry several different ones, and this is the one you might carry when you didn't expect to really abuse it, but you wanted something a little more cool. I'm guessing that is very expensive, by the way. Let's see. Let's right-click, open new tab. You're not going to see it, but I'll see it. $179 at Blade HQ. $179. So not the highest we're going to see in this list, but certainly not an economy model. We Knives Thug. Now, I've heard of this company, but I have never actually handled any of their stuff. High-end production stuff. This is definitely in the category of you're paying for a name, but you're also paying for the attention to detail in production to the degree of almost custom handmade stuff. Look how beautifully done the finish is on that handle. A brushed finish like that is very easy to not have correct. They did it correct. It looks like all the edges are radiused a little bit. Key on a knife like this. I like it. I don't necessarily think it's the most practical design. This concave curve in the blade, it really makes it a pain in the ass to sharpen, and it also makes it less than optimal for daily use because you're going to end up using the point right here and then the primary point. So your secondary and primary points are really going to take a lot of wear. It's much less likely for you to use the curve of the knife and spread that wear around. But looks like a very tough design, which makes sense given they're calling it the Thug. And if you wanted a heavy-duty knife, it looks like it's going to fill the bill without being huge. I like it. Apparently, this is Chinese manufacturing, but they must be very on their quality control. I am curious how much they want for that. Yeah. $257. MSRP is over $300. Okay, so here's one that I really liked. I have gone through this list previously. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Civivi, but it's their pintail model. I've never seen their stuff before, but I saw this and I go, ooh, I would carry that. You got a flipper, but discreet. It's not sticking way out. You've got actual handle material. You've got a very similar blade to my Cryo. I really like this. I think that you have the combination of a high enough bevel, a slim enough blade, particularly out here toward the point, the latter half of the blade. Because of that false edge, you're reducing the overall thickness, and it's tapering in without giving up a lot of the strength at the point there. You've got a regular edge and a curve to it. It's going to be a very practical design. I really like it. Again, I'm going to check how much they want for that. I didn't check earlier. $100. $100 in SV35 CPM, SV35 VN. Very popular steel. And it's the same price regardless of which handle material you choose. I may buy myself one of those as a Christmas present, folks. Yeah, I really like that. I think that is possibly the epitome of a practical, as opposed to a typical gentleman's folder is not necessarily as practical as it could be because it's trading off for looks and style. And then you have the, I'm trying to look cool and rugged and manly, where they trade off a lot of function for that kind of style. Tactile Knives Rockwall. Now, this is a company that they make pens, fancy, handmade pens. This is their first knife, and it shows in that they kept it simple, but on the other hand, it is really well done. And I think that for a first design, they really knocked it out of the park. This is what I mean by a gentleman's folder. The handle is going to be less than ideal for serious use. On the other hand, how often do you need serious use? Particularly if you're working an office job. This is the kind of thing where when you whip it out to open an envelope, people probably aren't going to freak out. It's very sleek, very elegant, without being over the top. Those are expensive, like $200. Oh, Texas, I didn't know they were Texas. Blue Rock, I'm not sure how they pronounce that. BRB3 V2 recurve. To me, this is an example of over-the-top style trying to look cool and manly at the expense of practicality. You have this thumb stud, area cut out, useless. Give me an actual thumb stud, and I'm happy. That's not going to be high profile enough to really work like the Spydercos do. I'm sure it works, but this grind, see how those lines are still in there? What that tells me is that they ground it on a machine with a circular grind going along the blade, not down the blade, along the blade, and then didn't finish it, didn't go in and clean it up. So whatever grit they ended with, and that looks pretty coarse, that was it. And to me, I understand what they're looking for. They're making it match with that handle pattern and everything. But to me, it's lazy. It is taking advantage of the aesthetic to reduce manufacturing costs and time. But the downside to that is it's going to corrode faster because you're adding surface area that is going to be very hard to keep clean. And it's going to have texture. And texture on your blade equals less efficient cutting. Combine that with a low bevel. It looks like it's a pretty hefty blade. It's hard to tell. To me, this is when you're willing to give up functionality and practicality for talking point style as opposed to gentleman style. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is bad or anything like that. I think it is very cool. It's the kind of thing you'll see in a movie set. It's the kind of thing that if you're doing a look, you may go for this. Apparently, these are pretty expensive for production, but still hard to get. Demco AD 20.5 Shark. This is another one I didn't know anything about, but liked. Practical handle design. I'm not a huge fan of having the raised nameplate there. I'm never a fan of anything raised or edged on a handle. And I wish there was a little more radiusing on the top of the handle here on those scales. In my experience, if they're not well radiused, it gets uncomfortable. Basic pivot, doesn't look like they did anything crazy fancy. Has a thumb stud, has the loop, has the cutout. I like the option. If I want the cutout and I don't want to use the thumb stud, I can take the thumb stud out. It looks like it's also a flipper, but I don't ever have a picture of it closed, and I haven't gone digging. You've got a raised edge for your thumb. Kind of nice. If you put your thumb further forward, you've got jimping on the hand or on the spine. But then you've got an edge that is almost straight and is a Wharncliffe style blade, sheep's foot almost, not quite. To me, this is a style blade that is getting more and more popular for looks, but isn't quite optimal for practicality. And if you go for a full sheep's foot, they can be very practical for rescue work. EMTs, firemen, police, anybody worried about using a knife to cut clothing off, to get a seatbelt cut off if it's somebody's trapped. But you still got a point on this. It's still, the point sticks out. It isn't recessed. It isn't straight down. You're going to cut somebody trying to wedge this in. But on the other hand, it's not so extremely forward that you're losing a lot of the strength. One of the weaknesses of those designs is always that the point is super fine. If you do it like this, the point isn't super fine, doesn't get broken a lot. Looks like a reasonable height bevel. Hopefully that steel isn't super thick. I like it. Not my preference for blade design, but again, personal preference. I am curious how much they want for that, because I think it's going to be not cheap, but not crazy. They are out of stock, not giving me a price tag. No price tag, not in stock. Yeah, limited availability is one of their cons listed. $150 price tag. So, I mean, it's not crazy. It's not great. Vero Engineering Neutron, or Neuron. This is neat. This is definitely form over function. Again, you have the same pattern blade, even less of a curve. Looks perfectly straight. Very impractical for use. Looks very cool, is a current trend. But still, the point is forward of the curve. You are not going to be able to wedge that under. No thumb stud. Very angular handle. Does not look like it's going to be super comfy to hold and work with. But again, if you're looking for a gentleman's folder that has a sleek and cool look, professional environment maybe, that's got some cool value to it, and is probably premium enough in price tag that you're showing off a little bit. Interesting. It is a non-locking blade, but it's got detents, so it's trying to stay closed and then it stays open. Okay. Grimsmo Rask. Again, we're back to knives that I think fit that optimal, or at least on average optimal design. Nice blade shape, nice blade profile, relatively high bevel. It's a flipper. It looks like you're going to have a fairly good hand protection when you're using it. Handle looks comfortable while providing enough traction, enough friction for your hand. Looks like a very simple, elegant design that's also visually attractive. RWL34 is very nice steel. Nothing crazy, but it's one of those steels that's just going to perform year after year after year. It's never going to be the new hotness. It was pretty popular when it first came out, but it never became SV35 or any of the other steels like that. They're constantly, the thing you have to have. Lock bar insert so that it's not going to wear. Yeah. Apparently very long wait list, very high dollar, but very well made. So yeah, I can see that. I wish I could see other angles of the knife, but it is what it is. Olamic whippersnapper bolster lock. If you're doing a job where that blade profile makes sense for you, great. But again, I think it's a profile that for most people, for day-to-day use, doesn't make sense. On the other hand, this is beautifully done. Old school, new school meets. These remind me of knives you would have seen from the 40s, 50s, maybe even 60s, but with modern flair to blades. I think that is very cool. Again, if you have a rotation you're doing and you can pick your day, very nice. Again, this is going to be very expensive. This is going to be probably a couple $100, $300 minimum. And they're saying beware the sticker price, so I'm betting it's $500. They're basically custom. Yeah, $700 seems to be not uncommon for them. So, to me, that fits in the category of you're showing off. You are in a group of people, other outdoorsmen that know high-end knives. I mean, I'm a knife guy, but I don't pay attention to who's the current thing for high-end knives. and it's been a few years since I was in the business, so. But to me, that was not an EDC. That fit in a whole different category. Kennison Knives Stray Pup. I wish we had a better picture. I can't really tell how the blade is done. I mean, it looks like a leaf blade liner lock flipper, which is not a bad design. Doesn't really do it for me one way or the other. I think that spending money for this kind of Damascus where it's just visual is silly. And any Damascus like this with these big sections, you've lost any advantage of actually being Damascus. And it shows that the person doing it really didn't do a good enough job, in my opinion. You should never have big solid sections like that unless it's a geometric pattern where clearly it was an intentional pattern that was then maintained when they did the grind on the knife. So I think that you're paying extra for materials that you're not benefiting from. Yeah, it's Nichols Damascus, but I've seen way better out of Nichols. Nichols Damascus is one of the main Damascus producers in the country, and they do very high end, they do very low end relatively, and a lot of mid. And this was definitely not. I don't think this was. If they're saying this is super high budget, which is what they're indicating, I don't think so. I think it should have been more. That is it. So we had a few that I liked. Few I just didn't think were going to be worth the squeeze. And one that I may buy. Ironically, I think it was the cheapest one on the list. To me, an EDC should be practical. It should be comfortable. It should be something you can afford to lose, even if it hurts. It shouldn't be something where you lose it and you can't just go get another one. That doesn't mean that every folding knife, every pocket knife you own has to be an EDC type knife. And it doesn't mean you can't carry something outside of that category. It just means it's not an EDC. It's a special occasion knife. It's your going to a wedding. I'm going to an event with a bunch of other outdoorsmen. Hell, take it hunting and show it off to your buddies, and it still does the job. It's still a great knife. But if you're paying the premium for really high-end stuff, why would you beat it up with all the EDC tasks? Even if you can afford to. It seems wasteful to me. Functionally, even a Kershaw Cryo, I always use that as my example because it's what I carry. Functionally, as a knife, that is fine. It's going to do everything you're going to need to do. So if you're spending more than that, you're spending it for things other than the knife itself. You see what I mean? It's not the knife. It's the aesthetics. It's the name. It's the feel. It's the joy of ownership. So just keep that in mind. When you're shopping for these kind of things, give some thought to what you care about, how you're going to use it. And I mean, most of us end up with multiples. You don't have one. Even though 90% of the time, this is what I'm carrying. I don't think I've carried a different knife in a year. I use my other knives all the time, but I don't carry them. On occasion, I'll carry this guy, fixed blade, tech lock. You carry it sideways. I carry it at my back. Very fine point, Warncliffe style. But I carry it when I'm doing something where a fixed blade with a very fine point is worthwhile. That's pretty rare. Very often I'll carry it when I'm going out in the woods, not because I'm going to use it for anything else, but because it's really good at getting out splinters. So I'll still carry something like this for all the mundane tasks, but cutting something for lunch, if I'm bringing something solid that you're then cutting, that works really well. It's very thin blade. And if I happen to get a splinter, it's a really good point for getting that out. Whereas this, there's tons of junk on the blade. It's never quite clean. I clean it and then it's 2 months before I clean it again. And the point is okay. So anyway, take care, have fun. I'm going to decide if I'm spending $100 on this pintail because, damn guys, that's slick. And I'm not sure. I think I'm going to get it in the brown. The brown with the bare steel, because it contrasts with this, and it contrasts. Most of my other knives are also a dark steel. This is coated. Most of the other knives that I do carry or use on a regular basis, other than my kitchen knives, are coated or finished in some way to reduce corrosion, really. So I'll have to think about it. Take care, have fun, stay safe. I'm going to record a couple more videos because I've got 2.5 more days with 1080 recording from this, and why not use it? I'll space them out over the next few weeks.